German past participles form perfect tenses, the passive voice, and can also function as adjectives. Their action is done to the subject of a phrase, sometimes using auxiliary verbs like sein and haben, and they describe the condition of something or someone and say that something is related to an action. Past participles are fundamental in forming all perfect tenses and all tenses of the passive voice, and they work as adjectives and modify nouns. In this video, I'll show how they're formed and used in the passive voice and as adjectives, but I will not explain perfect tenses because these are topics for the next videos. Past participles in German typically form based on a verb type. For weak regular verbs, past participles are formed by dropping the n ending, adding ge to the beginning of the verb, and adding to the end of the verb stem. Let's take the verbs machen, lernen, and spielen, which are regular verbs. The way we make past participles is by removing the verb endings, adding ge to the beginning, and then adding to the end of the stems. So, we get gemacht, gelernt, and gespielt. For strong, irregular verbs, past participles are similarly formed, but there are a few differences. We add ge, but keep the n ending, and often the verb stem will change a vowel with no pattern to follow, meaning that past participles of irregular verbs will have to be memorized. Let's take the verbs sehen, nehmen, and fahren, which are irregular verbs. The way we make past participles is by adding ge and keeping the ending n, but some verbs will need a stem change, like nehmen. So, we get gesehen, genommen, and gefahren. For mixed verbs, the pattern of making past participles will have traits of weak and strong verbs. Past participles of mixed verbs are formed by dropping the n ending, adding ge, changing the verb stem, and adding the ending te. Let's take the verbs bringen, denken, and wissen, which are mixed verbs. The way we make past participles is by removing n, adding ge, changing the verb stems, and adding te. So, we get gebracht, gedacht, and gewusst. Sometimes in German, you can find verbs with separable and inseparable prefixes, and it's possible to make them past participles. When it comes to inseparable prefixes, ge is not added, like in the verbs besuchen and verstehen. The past participles of these verbs will follow the rules I showed previously. So, the past participle of besuchen is besucht, and the past participle of verstehen is verstanden. When it comes to verbs with separable prefixes, ge will be added after the prefix and before the verb stem, like in the verbs anfangen and aufstehen. The past participles of these verbs will also follow the rules I showed previously. So, the past participle of anfangen is angefangen, and the past participle of aufstehen is aufgestanden. This is how past participles are formed in German, but now it's important to understand when to use them. Past participles are commonly used in spoken and informal written German to describe past events using perfect tenses, often made with auxiliary verbs like sein and haben. In such cases, the main verb will always take a participle form, and the order of the words may vary, considering a subject, a conjugated auxiliary verb, and a past participle of the main verb. The auxiliary verb itself can be the verb haben, which is used with many basic verbs, or sein, which is used with verbs indicating movement or a change of state or condition. This concept will be explained in the next videos. Aside from perfect tenses, past participles are also used in the passive voice. In German, the passive voice is formed using the auxiliary verb werden to become in the relevant tense, followed by a past participle of the main verb. The passive voice is different from the active voice in which the subject of the sentence carries out the action. To form the German passive voice, the auxiliary verb werden joins a past participle of a second verb using the following pattern: a subject, a conjugated verb werden, and a past participle of the main verb. An example of that can be Das Haus wird gebaut. This sentence emphasizes the ongoing process of building. Another example is Das Buch wurde geschrieben. In this phrase, wurde is the past form of werden, making the passive voice in the past simple and emphasizing that the writing happened in the past. Aside from the passive voice, the final use of German past participles is adjectives, which can be attributive, coming before a noun, or predicative, appearing after a linking verb. When used as adjectives, past participles describe nouns and pronouns, but they are affected by cases and declensions based on gender and number. If you're not familiar with German adjectives, I made a video about this topic, and I would recommend that you watch it because their declensions are very important to know. As I said, when past participles are used as adjectives, they describe nouns by giving them a quality related to the action of the verb and matching the case, gender, and number, like in the phrases Die gekochte Suppe, ein geschriebenes Buch, die verlorene Tasche. In the following sentences, all grammatical elements must match, like the articles and past participles as attributive adjectives. This is an advanced rule in German, which is why past participles as adjectives require a lot of explaining. Nonetheless, past participles as adjectives follow the same strong, weak, and mixed declension rules as basic attributive adjectives. Let's take the verb schreiben, and let's use it in the weak declension, which uses definite articles. Because schreiben is an irregular strong verb, its past participle will begin with ge, and in the weak declension, it will look like this. Der geschriebene Brief, die geschriebene Geschichte, das geschriebene Buch, die geschriebenen Bücher. These phrases are nominative. Ich lese den geschriebenen Brief. Ich lese die geschriebene Geschichte. Ich lese das geschriebene Buch. Ich lese die geschriebenen Bücher. These phrases are accusative. Ich helfe mit dem geschriebenen Brief. Ich helfe mit der geschriebenen Geschichte. Ich helfe mit dem geschriebenen Buch. Ich helfe mit den geschriebenen Büchern. These phrases are dative. Die Seite des geschriebenen Briefes. Die Seite der geschriebenen Geschichte. Die Seite des geschriebenen Buches. Die Seite der geschriebenen Bücher. These phrases are genitive. Notice how in every sentence, every grammatical element perfectly matches, which is why past participles are so important to know. In these sentences, I used past participles as attributive adjectives because they come before nouns that they describe. Moreover, German can also use past participles as predicative adjectives, but it's important to understand the difference. When a past participle is used before a noun, it behaves like a regular adjective and must be declined according to gender, case, and number, which is what I showed previously. However, when a past participle is used after linking verbs like sein, werden, or bleiben, it acts like a predicate adjective and is not declined, like in the phrase Die Tür ist geschlossen. The difference between past participles as attributives and predicatives is in the grammar. Attributive past participles come before nouns and are declined to match the case, gender, and number. Predicative past participles come after linking verbs and are not affected by declensions. Still, more concepts should be known about past participles. Sometimes, you may find present participles that have an active meaning, showing that something or someone is doing something. We know that past participles are used in the passive voice, showing something that has been done. But German also has the active voice, which oppositely uses present participles, like in the phrase Die kochende Suppe, the boiling soup. This sentence indicates that the soup is currently boiling, which is why it's in the active voice, using a present participle. Although they're not as common as past participles, present participles are still something you should know. Furthermore, it's possible to embed past participles in relative clauses to provide more detail, as opposed to using them as adjectives. For instance, the phrase Das gekaufte Auto ist teuer uses an attributive past participle. In a relative clause, the sentence can be rephrased, like Das Auto, das gekauft wurde, ist teuer. Aside from this concept, past participles can be nominalized, meaning turned into nouns, by being capitalized and referring to people or things, like der Verletzte, die Verlorenen, das Geschriebene. Lastly, it's possible to find past participles in fixed idiomatic expressions, like gut gemacht, gesagt, getan, ich bin gespannt. Overall, this is how past participles fully work in German, and as you learn them, focus on recognizing verb patterns, practicing passive constructions, and using them in real conversations. In the next videos, their usage in perfect tenses will be shown.